You are a liar. Look to your right. Now look to your left. There is a person seated on each side of you, and both of those people are liars. And if you're sitting in an aisle seat, or if you're watching alone from home, then I just lied to you too. We are all liars. And when I say that, I don't mean to say that we're all bad people, only that we are all exceptionally skilled at deception. Studies give a wide range, but we tell anywhere from 2 to 15 lies every single day. And what makes us so good at telling them, what makes us so adept at it, is that we each know our biggest victim both inside and out. We know what they need to hear, and we know that they need to hear it. In fact, our best lies aren't malicious lies. Our best lies probably aren't even conscious ones. Our best lies aren't the ones we tell to other people. They're the ones we tell to ourselves. So what exactly do these lies look like? Well, for the most part, these are the things we tell ourselves to quell the anxieties in our lives, big and small. And we are really quick to use them everywhere. Imagine you're at your friend's birthday party and they offer you a slice of cake. Most people are just going to take that and eat that, but if you're a health-conscious person, that can be a particularly difficult decision, especially if you're on a diet. And so if you want to give yourself a cheat day, if you want to eat that cake, what do you tell yourself? It's just one day. It doesn't matter. That is a lie. Every day matters. Every calorie matters. You all know that. And yet, we also all know that it feels really good to indulge in a slice of cake guilt-free. I mean, who wants to hate themselves while eating? And so we tell ourselves this lie, that it's just one day, it doesn't matter, and we believe it, and we use it to forgive ourselves. In short, we use it to go on living our lives. And again, this isn't something that just happens occasionally or once in a while. This is something all of you are doing constantly. I mean, what kinds of things do you tell yourself when things aren't going your way in life? It's probably for the best anyway, to soften a failure. Or they're in a better place to take the edge off of a loss. Or even, and I think this one is relatively self-explanatory, I'm happy in this relationship. That's one that, you know when that one's a lie. And I understand, and so these little leaks of anxiety open up in the plumbing of our psyches every single day. And whenever that happens, your brain rushes in with one of these little lies to patch over the gaps, to make things better again. And I understand I'm not bringing all of you along on that notion in 2 minutes of scattered anecdotes, and so I want to point you towards what I think is possibly the most compelling piece of scientific evidence to back this phenomenon. Decades ago, there was a very famous experiment done on patients who had undergone something that's called split brain surgery, a surgery that, while medically necessary for these particular people, resulted in their right brain and their left brain being split into 2 independently functioning halves. And the way that that would work out is that the left brain would control the right half of the body and see through the right eye, and the right brain would control the left half of the body and see through the left eye. And the researchers would exploit this. They would show each eye, remember controlled now by a newly independent half of the brain, a different image. Through the right eye, the left brain was shown a picture of a chicken foot. And through the left eye, the right brain was shown a picture of a snowy landscape. And they did not tell the patient that each half of their body was seeing a different image. And what they would do next is a bit like this. They would lay out 4 cards in front of the patient, and they would ask them, 4 cards on each side of the patient, and they would ask them to, with each hand, remember controlled by a different brain that is seeing through a different eye, a different image, to pick the card in front of them most related to the image that they just saw. And of course, the left brain, which saw the chicken feet, which image do you think it picked from the cards? If you're thinking the chicken, you'd be 100% correct. And the right brain, which saw the snowy landscape, make your guesses now, which do you think it's picking? Probably the snow shovel. And that is exactly what it did pick. So far, so good. Everything makes sense. But when the researchers asked the patient why they picked the cards they did, we saw something fascinating happen. Because what I haven't told you so far is that only one half of the brain, the left half of the brain, contains what is called the Broca area, the part of your brain that is responsible for speech. And so only the left side of the brain could answer the researchers' questions. And so obviously, when asked to explain why the left brain that saw the chicken foot chose the chicken card, it would explain that super easily. Chicken foot is a part of a chicken. They're very related. And that is true. That is correct. A correct answer by the left brain. But when the left brain was asked to explain why its other limb picked the snow shovel card, it would pause for a second and look down, and it would think, and would say, oh, well, isn't it obvious? You need the shovel to clean out the chicken shed. But that right there is a lie. That card was picked by the right side of the brain that saw the snowy landscape. The picking of that card had nothing to do with chickens at all. And yet, when confronted with this existential anxiety about why is a part of my body picking a card that I don't understand, doing something that I can't control, rather than simply admitting defeat to the question and saying I don't know, the left brain just made something up. And the researchers ran this experiment over and over with different images and different cards, and every single time when asked about the choice of card of the right brain, the left brain would just make something up. We are such efficient liars that our brains are ready to justify through some sort of story absolutely anything that doesn't initially make sense to us on the go. After all, we like things to make sense. If something doesn't make sense, that irks us. It's why children ask questions like why over and over. It's why we do science. It's why we gripe on plot holes in fiction. Our brains are brilliant at spinning stories. And I want you to hang on the word story with me for a second here, because that is exactly what these sorts of lies actually are. These aren't just one-off excuses that our brain is using to shove something to the side. They serve a much bigger purpose in your mind. They take the things that you don't have an answer for and are causing you that anxiety, and they fit them into a narrative. They make them make sense. And throughout our lives, we accumulate a ton of these little lies, a ton of these big lies even, that hold the various things in our minds in place, that hold the various questions that otherwise would cause us a huge amount of existential anxiety and panic in a place that makes sense to us. In short, these lies are important and they are needed. They are carefully crafted works of fiction. And I think we now know each other well enough, and I think we now have spoken enough to begin going a little deeper. That we can now begin to discuss topics that are a little more touchy. Because we all know that the biggest existential questions that we are grappling with in life are not questions like why I picked a snow shovel card or why we're getting a cheat day on our diet. If those are the major questions that you're dealing with in life right now, things are going fantastically for you. I promise. But for most of us, the questions are a bit tougher. Questions like, what will happen to me when I die? What is my purpose in life? How can I finally be happy? And just like with any other sort of question that makes you existentially anxious, when you encounter these problems, when you encounter these questions, it sends your brain into overdrive, trying to spin a story to answer them. But these are tough questions precisely because the stories that they require for answers are bigger than the ones your brain can generate on its own. And so sometimes your brain just doesn't generate the story on its own. Sometimes your brain takes inspiration from somewhere else, repositories of stories that already exist somewhere else in the world. Places like religion or philosophy, or even just the things that the people in your lives around you say that happen to ring true to you. All of those things count as these sorts of sources of inspiration for stories that might work in you. When religious parents raise children in that same religion, those children are literally inheriting their parents' stories. Things like, your purpose in life is to follow God. I bet you guys can guess what existential question that's answering. Or, the things that you encounter throughout your childhood, things from elementary school, things that adults might tell you. Things like, everything in life happens for a reason, or good things happen to good people. These also count. And you remember that book you read last month? The one when you were reading it, you were like, oh my God, this thing in here is what actually matters in life. I figured it out. That also probably counts. Our brains are constantly looking outwards and seeing what stories already exist in the world to see if they can take a shortcut and, instead of fabricating one on their own, bring it into us. It is wrong to steal also technically falls into this category of story, along with most of morality and ethics. Use that knowledge as you will. The larger things in life, institutions, school, your parents, they tend to hand down these prescriptive stories from on high, pitched as solutions to the problems in people's lives, in our lives, in your lives. But it is these particular inherited stories where we can see most clearly one of the biggest failings of this psychological process that creates these lies. Because not every lie that our brain tells us, not every lie that we tell ourselves is good for us. Now, most people that engage in religion get a lot of fulfillment from it. It enriches their lives, and it definitely provides them with meaningful stories that help them push aside the existential questions. But not everyone who is religious, not everybody in religion, is served by those stories. Imagine a child that grows up in a religion full of homophobic stories and in their adolescence realizes that they're gay. Going forward in life, through their adolescence into early young adulthood, the stories of that religion are already deeply embedded in them, and they could cause them some serious damage. Religious trauma is something we talk about for a reason. There is a place for common stories. There is a place for these larger stories. There's a reason that they're large. As human beings, we have a lot of common problems and a lot of common questions. And so, of course, there is a place for common solutions, but not every story works for everyone. So let's recap. Our brains are constantly fabricating stories, coming up with things to alleviate the anxieties and existential queries of our lives. Sometimes they fabricate them all on their own, and sometimes they take inspiration from an outside source. And sometimes they get it wrong. And sometimes they do it badly. So we're left with this question: what do we do about these bad lies, these bad stories that we've internalized? The answer might not be where you think it is. We cannot live without our fictions. We already know that. If all of them were gone, we would psychologically fall apart. That's why philosophers have such a bad record of staying alive for a long period of time. It's because they spend too long staring into their fictions, thinking too deeply about them until they all dissipate, and eventually they're psychologically left bearing the brunt of all of those existential questions in the raw. You don't want to end up like that. My philosophy teacher in high school used to tell this story about his own first serious philosophy mentor. This was when he was in his late teens, early 20s. This man, he called him a peculiar man. He was obsessed with his studies into values, beliefs, and what the truth of it all was. He was the epitome of a tortured philosopher. He had 2 apartments, but lived in neither. They were overrun with books. Instead, he lived between a hotel and his university office. And one day, eventually, he was unable to keep telling himself fictions. The last of his stories dissipated and fell apart. And so he got up from his office, he walked along the highway beside the university, found a highway sign, clambered up on top of it, and threatened to jump if the police wouldn't stop traffic and listen to what he had to say. My teacher didn't see him again after that. We cannot live without our fictions. But it is in this thing that happens to philosophers, what I like to call philosopher's disease, that we actually find the solution that we're looking for, the antidote to our bad fictions. Because if nothing else, philosopher's disease proves that when you stare too hard into a fiction, it dissipates. And it doesn't have to be something you let infect the entirety of you. You can apply it topically. If you find a bad fiction, you can apply philosopher's disease and kill it. So your job today is to start finding your bad fictions. Those are pretty easy to find if you know what you're looking for and you know what the shape of a story is. For the most part, if you're looking to find the bad stories in you that hurt other people, that's just a matter of taking an assay of your own beliefs and asking yourself, is what I believe right? But if you're looking for the stories in you that hurt you, those are much easier to find. Because when a story in you hurts you, it screams. That's the dread of continuing on in a major or a career that you once thought you wanted to be in. That's the ache of continuing on in a moribund relationship. It's the quiet but persistent anxiety of continuing to live a life that you don't want to be living. These are all signals, loud, unmistakable, that the stories that have got us to the points that we are in our lives are no longer helping us go on living, but are now suffocating us. And so, of course, once you find one of these bad fictions, give it a dose of philosopher's disease, scrutinize it, and let it die. And once you've let it die, there will be a hole in your psyche in the place that it once filled. There will be a need for a new fiction. But if I have told you nothing today, I have only told you that your brain is incredible at spinning stories. Your brain will be able to spin a story. And if you have an idea for a new story, then you can give your brain some inspiration, expose it to new ideas that it could use to fabricate one. I mean, why are we at a TED conference today, if not to do that? But really, from here, it's an exercise of trust. Trust your brain. Trust that you can spin a new story and put something in that place that is healthier. Remember what I said at the beginning. You are a liar. And let me tell you, you're great at it. Trust yourself. You've got this. Thank you.